r/AskReddit. What was the weirdest thing you encountered in a foreign country that was totally normal for the locals? The Pledge of Allegiance in American schools. It seems incredibly creepy and cultish to me. Just as I would imagine Nazi Germany. Edit, since people have been asking. In 2008, I spent a semester in a smallish town in Northern California. I'm German and any form of patriotism is frowned upon there. As you might expect. German schools talk a lot about the Nazis in history class. Feels like 50% of the history curriculum is about that. On my first day at an American high school, I was completely unprepared for this. I had heard about the pledge at some point, but didn't actually expect it to be so common. So there I was. New kid in class. Unfamiliar with the language and the culture. Thousands of miles away from home. Incredibly nervous. And then suddenly every single person in the room stands up and starts reciting the same words. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I just stood up and pretended like I was speaking along. It was weird. But at first I assumed this was just for the beginning of the new school year or something. Except that they did it every single day. And that's what made it so unsettling. And with my own cultural background, it's no surprise that it felt like a scene from a propaganda movie. At my particular school, everyone was very serene about the whole ordeal. Could be selection bias. Since homeroom was an American history class, I suppose it might have been a different experience if people had been obviously bored. Creepy and cultish for some Americans. 2. I never make my students recite it. Ducking commie. Absolutely no addresses in Costa Rica. If you want to go somewhere you have to know the landmarks around that area. I guess it might help with defenses considering they have no army. But it's a pain in the ass to get home from the bar. We had a big issue getting to our hotel in Costa Rica. Partially through the directions they said, turn right at the Green Church and go 40 kilometers. Well, they had painted the church bright yellow sometime between when the directions were written and when we arrived. My dad always joked about those type of directions. Like make a turn at the corner with an old dog sleeping. What if the damn dog is not there? Saw an old man and his wife pass a urinating cow in a crowded street somewhere in Karnataka, India. The man promptly cupped his hands, had a sip and splashed some on his wife before they continued down the street. India can be super crazy to an outsider. India sometimes seems super crazy to Indians. It's what happens with a country of a billion people that should really be a bunch of separate countries. In Ecuador, I drove down windy roads lined with houses. And on the roofs of many houses, dogs were just chilling. Apparently it's completely normal to use the roof of your house as a backyard to let your dog roam. Roof dogs? I will have to tell my wife someone mentioned them. We lived in Quito for a while and we'd walk down the streets and have dogs on the roof of houses bark at us. Never had it happen anywhere else. I guess dog poop above your house is better than in your yard. Edit =OMF. Gee, that many upvotes for roof dogs. Please have upvoted the guy who posted that I commented on. When I was in Taiwan waiting for the bus, I saw everyone getting in line to board. It was the strangest thing. No one was pushing or shoving to get on first. Everyone just waited for their turn. Like civilized people. You don't see groups of people taking up the whole sidewalk there either. Now I'm back home and I feel surrounded by barbarians sometimes. Edit, I'm from Belgium. You should try the UK. We love nice orderly queues. Heaven forbid the queue breaks down and you can't work out who should be first. After you. No. After you. No. I insist. In the country of Samoa. In the evening time around 7 o'clock in most villages, dozens of men go out to stand out in the road in front of their homes and blow on conches to mark the sa or required prayer time. It is illegal to be anywhere walking in the village. To be loud. etc. For the length of the 5-10 minute sa, it is illegal to be anywhere walking in the village. So if you were already walking around in the village, what would you do? Sit your ass right down. People sunbaking in central London parks in their underwear. A bit of sun would come out and office workers would sit out in their lunch breaks without tops. Do you know how much sun we get on average per year? Need to soak up that vitamin D when we can. I've got a friend who's of Indian descent, and he has to take vitamin D tablets because there is so little sun in the north. Men holding hands in the Middle East. Despite the extreme social taboo against homosexuality in most parts of the Middle East, it's also usually a capital offense. Men holding hands is a perfectly normal and acceptable sign of friendship, rather than the signifier of a romantic relationship that it would be in the West. India too. It's super adorable. With close friends they even walk about with arms around each other's waists. Came to say this about Nepal. You see this everywhere. Can't say for India, but boys of Pakistani descent are frequently doing long handshake/hand holding here in the UK, which I'm nothing more recently. The amount of Indian food you can find in London. It does make a whole lot of sense though. Brits first invaded India. Now India is having its revenge. What? We steal India's wealth and resources, so they enrich our eating choices. I think we got the good end of that deal. Brit. Married to American. In PA since 2001. I still can't get used to the idea of a deadly weapons section in a big shop. Women's clothing. Seasonal decorations. Electrical goods. Sporting stuff like tennis rackets and golf clubs. Hitload of shotguns and pistols. Edit and goodbye embarks. Awesome you call it PA. You're one of us now. What else are you supposed to do? Spell out Pansy? Oh my god, I'm exhausted. Went to the cinema in Japan to see a Harry Potter film in English with Japanese subtitles. The film was good. I guess the humor didn't translate well into Japanese, which is fine. But at times I was the only person laughing in an every seat filled cinema. Anyway, that wasn't the weird thing. When the film finished and the credits rolled, no one moved. I started packing up my things and realized I was the only person in a room of at least 100 people making a move to leave. So I sat down again. I realized they were sitting and attentively watching the credits. All 5 minutes of them. Then, after they ended, everyone politely and quietly collected their things in a hushed silence. I was flabbergasted. In the UK everyone stands up as soon as the end credits start. Unless it's a Marvel film where everyone now sits talking quietly waiting for a potential secret scene at the end of the credits. Worked at a movie theater and Marvel films take forever to clean afterwards because people watch all 10 minutes of credits while we stand broom in habit. Plagiarism. In the Philippines. This is in a medical school. I put together a paper we worked on as a group and half the people plagiarized their part. I talked to my friend about it and she said students here can even pay people to write their senior thesis papers for them. I talked to my friends in other groups and they all had at least one person plagiarize their part. So I told my 3 guilty groupmates to rewrite their parts. 2 of them just rearranged the words around. I have never been so mad and disappointed at something school related. Thankfully, we didn't have any other group papers to write. This helps explain why medical degrees from many countries are not as valued. My city has a high Burmese population. My high school physics teacher on career day had us talk to one another about our parents' jobs and made sure we included the Burmese, even though they kept to themselves. My teacher said that you would be surprised. Many of their parents were doctors or lawyers before fleeing. Upon speaking to the kids I learned that they were no longer in said professions because they couldn't perform the same duties to pass the required tests, such as the bar exam, or whatever it is. What you said just made me think of this. Edit. If anyone wants to read at least a little bit more about the topic, Google along the lines of Burma refugees. Fort Wayne, we have a decent population of them that to my knowledge at least are fairly well integrated. Could be completely wrong on that part however. Strip club in Mexico has a fairly sizable altar to Jesus behind the bar. Bleeding heart and all. Edit. Spelling. Hey, if Catholics enjoy anything it's alcohol and X. That and guilt. Catholics love them some guilt. I've been to America and every piece of bread ever is so sweet it's like biting into a cake. Like whatever, sliced bread, whole bread, hamburger bun, it's ducking disgusting. When I told people they thought I'm a ducking lunatic. And I got deported back. This is interesting because I feel the exact opposite. When I moved from Korea to the US I realized how different bread is, which is something I'd always thought was pretty universal. Turns out the bread in Korea is much sweeter and thicker than what they have in the US. China is same. I found Subway bread tasted odd. Cockfights and openly sold magic mushrooms. In Indonesia. I thought it was a scam and tried a magic smoothie. I mean, you cannot sell drug like this on the streets. In a Muslim country. I was hit-faced. Designated dealing streets. United States. Drivers not using turn signals. TVs at bars and restaurants everywhere. Even upscale places. People with full-time jobs getting like 10 days off a year. A majority of people eating out for lunch every day. Apparently it was common knowledge you should not rely on the bus to get anywhere. Plus only very poor and homeless seem to ride it. Duck those assholes who don't use turn signals. It's a pet peeve of a lot of Americans to see others do that. Actually. Probably not the weirdest. But London not having any trash cans is certainly interesting. Well yeah, we kind of got tired of certain people putting bombs in them all the time. They're coming back now though. Clear plastic bags with just a fixed hoop at the top mean you can see inside. Germany, drinking tap water daily. You will die if you try that a single day in my country. France, kissing openly in public. You will be celebrity and may be punished legally if you try it in my country. I can't think of a place where I haven't drank tap water in Europe. I can't think of a place in Europe where one couldn't openly kiss. From the Netherlands. But our tap may be one of the best in the world. I drank tap water in France for example. But it tasted weird / chlorine like. We thought it was weird while traveling around the UK to see flocks of sheep on the hillsides with their fleece spray painted a variety of colors from town to town all across the land. It's generally just a way for a farmer to identify his sheep in case they escape. It's also so he knows which sheep he's already dipped pesticide or which ewes he's allowed to be with a ram. So he knows which ones to keep an eye on for lambing. And sometimes it's because of football, which ewes he's allowed to be with a ram. The paint would be on their backs in those cases. The way it works is the ram is equipped with a bag full of paint strapped to his stomach before being let loose in a field full of ewes. A week later, the farmer comes back and all the ewes with paint on their backs are put to one side. The ewes without paint on their backs are taught to apply makeup and sway their hips when walking. I lived in Korea for a few years, and one small cultural difference that takes getting used to is sharing food. Most restaurants serve food family style, so you're all sharing plates / bowls / etc. Except for your rice. Getting used to sharing plates is pretty easy as you're picking food off with your chopsticks and don't really touch the other food. But to me sharing soup took a little longer. Well it would if you were using chopsticks. Japan. The lack of public trash cans. I come from Denmark. And there is a trash can at every bus stop. Every street. Everywhere. You rarely have to carry something around for more than a few minutes at most. But in Japan, I found less than 3 public trash cans during the months I was staying there. The Japanese people are just like, oh, yeah. Just put it in your bag, or in your trash, when you come home. And oh my god. The fake bad noise is being played by speakers hiding in bushes and trees everywhere. I only really experienced this in Kyoto and nearby places. But all over Japan, there are some kind of tweeting / chirping sound coming from the pedestrian crossings. Maybe to aid blind people. People vacuuming the outside areas of train stations. Yes. It really is that clean some places. The XL harassment and suppression of women / emotions is absolutely crazy. Young high school girls getting touched in the train. Women sitting in the corner of stores crying their eyes out and everybody else just pretends that they aren't there. One of my female Japanese friends, teenager, was being followed by an old man who asked her if she wanted to duck her for a couple $100. She just ran away and didn't report it to the police because that's just how that part of the city is. And there is nothing you can do and so on. Some girls say that they experience XL harassment basically every week in the train on their way to school or work. And it has just become routine. They don't even say anything or do anything. The outright racism was what caught me off guard. It was generally polite and mostly just consisted of small scale segregation. Like, you're walking along with friends. You try to enter a shop and someone walks up to you and says, "Sorry, Japanese only." Nobody batted an eye. It was just totally normal. So I just ducked off and went to another shop. Aside from that though, the young people were friendly and the old people were helpful, if not overly warm. You could buy air from a vending machine on the street. And I'll be damned if that wasn't the cleanest country imaginable. Like, no trash anywhere. Not even a cigarette butt. Edit, but. Edit 2, for all of the folks who seem to be seriously but hurt over this comment. I'm not implying that Japan is some sort of backwards, racist horror show. What I described were isolated incidents over an extended period of time. And yes, what I described did actually happen. More than once. Furthermore, I spent enough time in Japan to understand the difference between their politeness and rudeness standards. When I described it as generally polite, I simply meant that it didn't resemble the incidents that you see in the US media. I don't care if it never happened to you or your 1500 white friends living in every Japanese prefecture. It happened to me. And frankly, I couldn't have cared less about that either. Most of the people I interacted with were friendly or cordial at the very least, and I had a great experience there. But there were a few assholes. Get over it. America, that tiniest door gap in the toilet cubicles. Had a few awkward glances between me and a work colleague between those gaps. Just plain weird for a British person. It's weird for Americans too. When I was in Germany, the bathrooms at my university had stall doors that sealed completely. It was luxurious as duck. Ducking. Like and subscribe.